People, they still think it is, okay, I just get on a podcast, get on a show, I be famous, or I'm getting clients. And I think they should just understand that this is a long-term marketing strategy. Nothing happens overnight. So you have to rinse and repeat and get on those podcasts and do it consistently and persistently. I think that's one of those elements.
Welcome to Be Bold Branding, where we discuss the power of differentiating yourself through your own unique story and standout personal brand. If you're looking to acquire more customers, increase demand for your products or services, and generate more engagement, you should consider podcasts. Our guest today is Noemi Beres, co-owner of Podcast Connections. As we teach, it's easy to get on a podcast, but not so easy to get on the right podcast and get a return on your time. So when Noemi talked with us about getting guests on quality podcasts, we wanted to hear more.
Noemi, welcome to Be Bold Branding.
Thank you so much for having me on today. It's an honor.
Yeah, this is a great topic, obviously. Podcasting is ever getting more and more popular. And, we need people like you and your company to be sure that we maximize the being good guests and getting on the right shows for the right reasons. But before we get into a lot of that, we like to know a little bit about our guest on our show here. You want to tell everybody a little bit more about you, how you ended up in the podcast business, and a little bit of your background that brought you here?
Absolutely. I would love to do that. Thank you. Yeah, so I was born and raised in Hungary in Central Europe, and I have a master's degree in Scandinavian studies, Scandinavian linguistics, which has nothing to do with podcasts. That's always usually the case. And so I lived in different countries. I lived in Denmark, in Ireland, and ended up in Cyprus in Europe with my husband. And we had an online travel-related business for many, many years, from 2007 up to 2020. We were the first online car rental brokers in Hungary for Hungarian customers. So it was a completely another niche. It was a completely another industry we worked in. I was content creator. I was in social media marketing, blogging, writing, travel writing, you name it, wearing too many hats when you are a solopreneur. But then the business went well, COVID hit, pandemic happened, and the travel industry collapsed from one day to another. And we were told that, yes, you will continue in 2 weeks, and 2 years gone, and the business wasn't really up to par. So we had to pivot. And that's when, luckily, my husband had a mentor, an Irish guy, who advised us to start something in the podcasting business, in the podcasting world in 2020. That was back in March, April, I guess. And so my husband told me, okay, so let's do this. Let's start a podcast booking agency. We did like kind of a course on how to be podcast booking agents. And he created a website during one night. And next day told me, say, okay, we need clients. So we need to do this and find those clients. And that's how it happened. And that was a huge learning curve for us, for sure, because I didn't even listen to podcasts before 2020. In Europe, we are still behind when it comes to podcasting, podcast guesting. So you are way ahead of us in this game, in the podcasting game. So it was really, really interesting. And first we started to work solely with female e-commerce entrepreneurs from the US. So we reached out to them. And that's how it all started.
Wow. What were some of the challenges you faced in the very beginning?
First, you need to get those clients. and that's the biggest challenge, I guess, in every business. And because we weren't in a business that we had to deal with B2B clients, it was a whole different game. Because we had clients, they were people just traveling and renting cars. So that was the different model. But here you had to be, set up an agency, connect with these people, network a lot, and find those people in the US. And because we are from Europe and nobody knew about us, like, who are you? And like, why are you reaching out to me? And why do you want to work with me? So, but you had to convince them that, yes, I'm the right person for you. I will find those podcasts. That was probably the biggest challenge, I guess. And Because it was in the middle of the pandemic, and I just lost my dad to cancer. He passed away in 2019, and my grandma to an accident in 2019, 6 months later. And then the whole COVID thing happened in the early 2020. So it was a lot going on, and we lost our business as well. So I was like losing everything at the same time. So that was probably the biggest challenge than getting clients on board.
No doubt. Is that the focus? Do you focus on helping the guests become and then find the right shows? Is that sort of how your model is set up, or do you do both? Also help hosts get the right guests?
Yeah, that's a great question. We find a podcast for the guests. It's like we are a PR agency, but solely focus on clients who want to be guests on other people's podcasts. Yeah.
Gotcha. Very good.
Any specific type? I know you said you started out working with women in the e-commerce space. Has that expanded, and what kind of guests are you helping to place now?
All kinds of guests. As long as they have an established business and they are authors or they have a valuable service to offer. We have clients like LinkedIn experts, healers, leadership coaches, sustainability experts, you name it. So very many like different interesting niches we work with.
No doubt. What do you think is the most undervalued thing in podcasting these days?
That's a great question. The most undervalued thing, people, they still think it is, okay, I just get on a podcast, get on a show, I be famous, or I'm getting clients. And I think they should just understand that this is a long-term marketing strategy. Nothing happens overnight. So you have to rinse and repeat and get on those podcasts and do it consistently and persistently. I think that's one of those elements.
Yeah, well, I would agree with that totally. It's, it isn't just, hey, I showed up on the right podcast and the phone started ringing off the hook. It's a great opportunity for exposure to hopefully the ideal client that you got on the other end of that. And we love podcasting, being guests as well as hosting. We love them both, but we definitely see it as, like you said, a long-term game. Your brand has to be right. And then obviously you got to be dialed into the right client and clientele on the other end of that listenership. And it sounds like that's what you help people do.
Yeah, absolutely. Like a matchmaker in the podcast world, you have to find the right mix and match. You really have to know your clients, their niche, their business, their ideas, their story in order to represent them for the right shows. That's really important. One of the key factors.
And I know there are quite a few podcast matching websites out there where you can kind of match up with a host and match up with a guest. And I will say that about them. They're wonderful. They give you a great head start, but it still takes time to go through those, screen them, sift through them, make sure they're the right kind of match up. Just because something matches up on paper doesn't always match up in terms of time, of your time best spent. Talk a little bit about that, Noemi.
Absolutely, I agree with you. These are great services, and I'm also a member a couple of those because I'm checking them out. I mean, that's important. But on the other hand, it's really time consuming when you have to do everything by yourself and you want to focus on your business, want to get clients. You don't necessarily want to spend your days with looking for podcasts. So that's when a podcast booking agency come into the picture, because they can save you that time, money, energy on those looking for the right fit. And sometimes they are not, and you just really have to find it out, like what's going on with them. I think that's one of the factors. Plus, when you have a podcast booking agent, the service is very, very tailored, so they know you. Our company is still, I would say, it's a boutique agency. So we really love to work with people who, for example, starting out in the podcast booking world. I know there are podcast booking agencies, they're focusing on 6-7 figure businesses. We don't. I mean, if you want to work with us, you don't need to have to prove that you are 6-7, whatever figure business you got. If you are open to share your story, you're vulnerable, and you want to teach people, you want to share your knowledge, I mean, we're happy to help. And I love, for example, working with seasoned entrepreneurs. I have entrepreneurs who are like over 60 plus, 70 plus, and they are amazing to work with. And I didn't even know that we really like find this, great vibe, but we got that. So I love working with like elderly entrepreneurs who are, starting out in the business. I think it's pretty awesome to work with them.
Yeah, I think it's awesome too. Grabbing like the older generation, grabbing that newer technology and grasping it and doing well with it is always. I love that.
Yeah.
It's staying current is
and
always.
Another thing that I think helps with that generation, why you love it so much, is because that's the generation that appreciated real customer service.
Yeah,
because they had it back then.
Point. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
We don't have as much of that today as we had back in, people that are now in their 60s and 70s had that customer service, because today's youth doesn't even really know what that looks like.
Mm-mm.
Yeah, I know. I know what you mean. Yes, absolutely. I agree. Yeah.
What do you think people are doing wrong when it comes to podcasting? You got a couple of tips for people?
Yes, absolutely. When you're not prepared for an interview. And I love that you have your pre-call, like group pre-call. I've never been to one. Yours was the first one, like group pre-call. I think it's a brilliant idea to save time, money, energy on everything, and to get to know people. Plus, you can vet them out first. So I think that's because you can see who is serious and who just winging, and they just want to get on your show no matter what. If they're the right fit, not the right fit, they don't care. So I think it's really important that you get people who are really well prepared. I think that's key, to be prepared. And those people are willing to listen to a few episodes before the interview. They do their research, they do their homework. Otherwise, it's just not professional. Or when they're not respectful with your time, they don't show up on time, or they don't show up at all. That could be like a red flag when it comes to podcast guesting. And also be prepared. Don't be too stiff, and be conversational. I mean, this is like having a conversation over a cup of coffee or tea. I mean, between two friends. And I think that's the power and the beauty of podcast guesting. If you and don't do the monologues either. So try to have that balance between the host and the guest to find that amazing middle way when you can really feel it. That's a real conversation and not just a monologue by the guest about their life or whatever, from birth to up till now.
Like what you're hearing? Hit that subscribe button and learn how you can change how you're seen and charge what you're worth.
Yeah. And I couldn't agree with you more. Yeah.
And from the group call, Noemi, we talked a lot about the fact that it's easy to get on podcasts these days. Mm-hmm. So a lot of people might look at this and say, well, I don't need a podcast booking agency. It's pretty easy to get on podcasts. To which I would say, and then I want to hear your answer, to which I would say, yeah, of course it's easy to get on any old podcast, but this is for the people who say all PR is good PR, and it's not. It's not.
Right.
They're not all the right shows. And you can find yourself very quickly and easily wasting a lot of time on podcasts and having nothing to show for it. So what say you about that, Noemi?
I agree with you 100%. I mean, once you create evergreen content, plus these podcast interviews will stay on the internet forever. So if you don't find the right shows, or if you're picking shows that are not good for your business, I mean, you can end up in a place that you don't want to be regarding your brand, regarding your authority. And you don't want to be maybe acquainted with these shows that are not for you or not for your business. So that's why you need to do the research to find the right ones, because these shows, they will be there. I mean, people will type your name in and they will pop up. It's a good show, bad show, everything will pop up. So you have to be careful. You have to consider that.
Yeah, I agree with that. We found it in our time in tenure being in podcasting. We originally thought that same thing, got caught in that trap, recognized that, we were showing up 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 times a week on podcasts. And then we're like scratching our head. And we're like, these aren't the right, they're not talking to our clients. So we're not talking to our clients, And then when we made that informed decision to start vetting and ended up on the right ones, then we ended up getting, work and clientele and sales opportunities because we were talking to the right group. And so people like a service like yours is so important to somebody starting off in podcasting, to make sure that they head in the right direction early on. Don't waste the time that so many others have already done.
And I would say, and one of the biggest reasons we wanted to have you on, Noemi, was your focus in this and your thought process with everything, but also because probably 98% of our clientele and our audience is either a podcaster or they're trying to guest on podcasts. And so it's just a big topic. And I never thought about what you just said. So thank you for that. What you just said is they're up. These episodes are on the internet forever. So you want to make sure that it's the right ones, that you don't look back and say, oh my gosh, I'm so embarrassed that I was on this podcast with this, 18-year-old kid that was basically sitting in the dark and his microphone was terrible. And now it's out there forever, right? And I'm pretty sure we've had a few of those.
I know we have. We've hosted a few of those.
Yeah, we've definitely hosted them. We did. I'm sure they're still out there in cyberspace. I hope they're way out there in cyberspace. And we know we have removed them from our podcast hosting platform. The ones early on, Michael, you can set up the tone for what our podcast used to look like.
Oh, it was terrible. It was terrible. I would be, we shot them on Fridays and I would be in the car traveling. And I would just find a convenience store that had good internet, and I could just pull over on the side of the road. I'd put towels up to block the sun coming in my automobile. And then Tanya was in the office. And so we shot side by side. We didn't have guests. We just had me and her. They were terrible. I mean, we did them, done is better than perfect, guys. So anybody listening out there that's waiting until it's perfect to get started, no, go get started. But take it from people who've already been there and listen to a Noemi that can tell you the best way to go about this, because we wasted a good bit of time.
Oh gosh, yes we did. Yes we did.
But you were very inventive with the background and everything. I like that.
Yeah. Oh yeah, we did. We were working with what we had, but we figured out right quick we need to change this.
And I was his eyeballs on the other side. I said, Michael, that lighting is terrible. You have to hang a towel here. There. No, that's not enough. Do you have another towel? You have to hang it on the other side and remove those hangers, those clothes hangers behind you in this. I mean, this looks junky back there, right? And the audio was terrible. I could go on and on. So hopefully nobody will go out and search for them.
After this, they will.
I know, right? Right. It's going to be an embarrassing. Maybe we'll just say there are bloopers. Let's just say that.
That's it. Yeah.
So, Noemi, tell everybody how our audience can learn more about you and about Podcast Connections.
Sure, thank you. Yes, they can visit our website, which is podcastconnections.co and plural, so connections, and .co, not .com. And you can always find me on LinkedIn. If you type my name in, Noemi Beres, I will come up with the little microphone sign, and that's me. And I'm happy to connect. I'm happy to jump on a call and, get to know each other and get to know about each other's service.
Noemi, thank you so much for taking time with us today. Your insight's been awesome, and I hope everybody checks you guys out at Podcast Connections.
Thank you so much for having me today.
Ready to change how you're seen and charge what you're worth? If you're not getting enough opportunities to meet with ideal customers, or the prospects you're meeting with just aren't ideal, it's most likely your brand that's holding you back. So if you're a coach, consultant, or expert who is on the rise, you need our ultimate guide to a freedom-based brand. Download it free now at BrandFaceGuide.com.